All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 TV show in the United States. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon and Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Murder of Quality by John Le Carre. I don't know if you can see the title, it's glaring there. A Murder of Quality, John Le Carre. Came out in 1962. A thin little murder mystery book starring one of his most favorite characters, George Smiley. In fact, this is the second George Smiley novel. I reviewed the first one a few months ago, and we're going to be reading and reviewing all the John Le Carre thrillers in order of publication. I've got my entire John Le Carre collection over here. I think I can turn the thing. Let's see. I think it's right there. That is it right there. All the John Le Carre books. Anyway, one of my favorite writers, known for his thrillers, like The Constant Gardener, The Tailor of Panama, The Russia House, Tinker Tailor, Soldier Spy. And he's written so many classics. Can't even count them all. Well, I could count them all. I am capable of counting up to about 24 books which he's written. Anyway, let's talk about the cover first. I like the cover. All of his books have been re-released in these nice new trade paperback versions with the flashy covers with the different images on them. They're good. They all look, I mean, you saw them over there. They look great on the shelf. Let's talk about this. So, John Le Carre, in the foreword here, he writes that he wrote this, he wasn't that proud of his earlier books. He didn't really hit his stride until book number 3, which was The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That's where he really sort of found his voice. So these first 2 books he wrote, in the foreword, he's like, I'm not that proud of them. I wrote them with a lot of emotion and not very much talent as a writer. And then he says he wrote this book specifically out of both a seething hatred and a deep and abiding love for those British boarding schools for young boys that I think he must have attended one. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to say that, I don't think. But it's kind of like a British thing, these boarding schools. I mean, there's a tradition of these schools where boys go to learn at a school and they live there on the campus, and they kind of have this kind of like J.K. Rowling sort of pulled from that tradition with Hogwarts. John Le Carre's pulled from the tradition. Ken Follett's written a few books that happen in boarding schools, A Dangerous Fortune. And then even Elizabeth George set a couple of her mystery novels, her Inspector Lindley novels in these boarding schools, these British boarding schools. So it's kind of like, these boys' schools are ripe for storytelling. I guess the only equivalent we would have in America would be the military schools like West Point and things like that. And even was it Pat Conroy did the Lords of Discipline about one of those. Anyway, John Le Carre said that he kind of stumbled through this novel. Let's see, he claims it's his least favorite. It's about a murder mystery, and George Smiley, the main characters, have to solve it. It starts with well, anyway, and another thing about these boarding schools is they're always kind of revolve around athletics of some type. Like, this starts out with the boys, on the rugby field. And they've got their little rugby clan, and they're competitive against these other boys in the boarding school and rival boarding schools and all this stuff. It's kind of like, well, that's what J.K. Rowling sort of did with Quidditch. She incorporated that thing in there too. And even the Hogwarts had the different, like the Slytherin and the Hufflepuff and the Gryffindors and whoever else. They were all, even within the boarding school, there were different factions, which happens in every boarding school murder mystery I've ever read, including this one. Well, what happens is Alison Brimley, she gets a letter. And in the letter, she reads it, and it's from a friend of hers named Stella Rode. And Stella Rode says, I fear that my husband's going to kill me. And her husband just happens to be one of these masters at the boarding school. Well, anyway, Brimley, she's like, my friend's kind of nutty. I doubt her husband's really going to kill her, and whatever. And so she doesn't really do anything about it. She doesn't go to the police or anything like that. Well, actually, her friend turns up murdered. Stella is murdered, and in comes George Smiley, the investigator, to sort everything out. And this is just actually this is kind of an exquisitely drawn. I mean, despite John Le Carre's disappointment in his own creation here, this is actually an exquisite sort of satirical look at elite private schools and kind of the shenanigans that play out in them as George Smiley goes to investigate this stuff. I mean, George Smiley himself is a real sardonic, sort of cynical man, and it really comes out in this. Um, and despite John Le Carre not liking his own book, I quite liked it. I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. Is it up to the quality and detail, and is the prose as proficient and just magical as some of his later novels? No, but it's actually pretty fucking competent and pretty damn good for a guy that was just now. John Le Carre was a spy for M16 or ML6. I don't remember. The British spy agency. John, the writer himself, was a spy, so he was writing these books. The first 3 or 4 books he just wrote in his spare time, as he was doing spycraft in Germany and Russia and France and places like that. So you got to give a shout out to the guy for everything he accomplished in life, including these books. Yeah, 7.5 out of 10. A Murder of Quality. 1962, John Le Carre's second novel he ever wrote. I think it was all right.